I think people take for granted that it thinks that the LLM is thinking in some fashion when it's just running a really complex math problem, right?
There's certainly a huge benefit for using it, but you've got to have the right controls in place and the right, structure for being able to leverage it well.
Welcome back, everybody, to AI with Bry, the show where we help you learn, leverage, and lead with AI. I'm your host, Brian Denstead, and each episode we go beyond the buzzwords and we talk with leaders who are actually in the arena, making decisions, building teams, and navigating complexity as AI reshapes how work gets done. Today's guest is someone who sits at the intersection of strategy, execution, and leadership. Paul King, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Paul is a principal at Tech CXO, where he works directly with founders, CEOs, and executive teams to bring some operational clarity, scalable systems, and disciplined leadership to growing organizations. Paul has spent his career helping companies move from ambition to execution, and today we're going to talk about how AI fits into that journey. Not so much as a shiny tool, but as a leadership lever. When to use it, when to slow it down, how executives can stay grounded while everything accelerates. So thanks again, Paul. Appreciate you being here. Anything I missed on your bio?
No, I think that's good.
Awesome. Well, we're jumping into the learn segment first. You get to work with executives all across the globe, honestly, who are under constant pressure to modernize and move faster. And from your vantage point, what have you learned recently about AI that might change how you are advising leaders? I mean, we're all changing so much with this AI wave that's hitting us.
Yeah, my background is very much leading product development teams. And from that perspective, AI has totally transformed the way that we build products. There's a lot of tools out there. I was looking at the story behind Lovable as far as the tool, and I didn't know that much about their story, and I read that they started in 23, and now they're worth maybe $6 billion. And, it's just really insane how fast it's moved and how much it can accelerate things. But of course, as we all know, if we've worked with AI at all, the hallucinations that happen are real, and you can't just put it on autopilot. And so there's certainly a huge benefit for using it, but you've got to have the right controls in place and the right structure for being able to leverage it well.
Yeah. It's so true, because I know in the early days of the GPT, I used to show developers, hey, how many R's are in the word strawberry, and the AI would get it wrong, right? But now it can knock that question out of the park. So I'm always looking for other questions that you and I can use as leaders to demonstrate how we still need to control the narrative in a big way. I think people take for granted that it thinks that the LLM is thinking in some fashion when it's just running a really complex math problem, right? So the latest example I came up with is that triangle problem. Well, actually, another great CEO or CTO that I know gave me this one. So big credit to Stacy on this one. But the triangle of, you show the picture of all the triangles and you ask the AI, how many triangles are on this picture? And the AI will come back and say there's 7 or something. But you say no, but I wanted all the overlapping triangles. And then it'll say, oh, you're right. If we look at overlapping triangles, it's really 12 or 13 or whatever it is, right? Yeah. But that's a perfect example of, it didn't quite hallucinate. It just didn't understand the problem good enough. We didn't give it enough clarity as the controller of the tool to get the outcome that we wanted, right? Do you have any examples like that you've seen with AI or something? I just think that's a really powerful one for people to understand. Developers control the narrative of the output, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the examples that come to mind are just, times where I've looked, I've asked ChatGPT or Claude, how do you do a certain thing? And I was trying to do something with a Google Sheet the other day, and I asked it how to do that, and it said, go to this menu and look for this option. And that option didn't exist. And I said, that doesn't exist. And it said, oh, yeah, well, that's right, because that's only in Excel. And so, for Google Sheets, you need to do it this way. And so there's a lot of times where it comes up with things like that. And then there's other things where it dreamed up, fabricated features in a product that didn't exist at all,
Right.
So it wasn't a matter of confusing Excel for Google Sheets. It was, it just simply didn't have a feature, and it seemed like a good feature to have for that particular product, but it was, it was fabricating this whole feature that the product simply just didn't even have. And so you can do that in anything, right? So when we tell it to write code to do certain things or whatever, you've got to have those checks and balances in place, or you're going to get some very interesting things that you don't really want.
That's right. That's right. It's all about the context of what you want it to really hone in on, and giving it the right rule set and framing, and then knowing that it went off the path, because a lot of people are following it blindly, for sure. Yeah. Are there other ways that you're really learning and leaning in on learning with AI? Are there some favorite tools? What's your favorite LLM? Like, give us the breakdown on some of the things that you get to play with day to day.
Well, as with most people, I started with ChatGPT, but then I started evaluating the different LLMs and trying to, pose the same question, the same prompt exactly to all the different ones, and got more and more complex with those prompts and what I was asking it to do. And so I found pretty quickly that they all have very similar results. I didn't find any one of them being, on the things that I was asking at least, being, necessarily better than the other one. It was different, slightly different, but but I was asking technical questions, or, architecture questions. How do you build a system that does this, this, and this? What's the best tools to use? Best frameworks to use? And many times the overlap was 80 to 90% on what they came back with. So, but I tend to use Gemini and Claude the most now. I think they're, like, as things got more and more complex, I feel like they gave me the better results in the long run. Right. So that's kind of what I've used it. Now, from a coding standpoint, which is what I've been working with a lot to optimize and figure out the overall, the best tool sets to use for optimizing the overall product development process. I looked at Cursor, was very impressed with that at first, and then I tried Copilot, and that was very impressive. But I kept hearing everybody saying Claude Code was the way to go, and so so I went to Claude Code, and I would agree that that's been the best one for local development, at least. So as building out products, I mean, I had a side project that I've been thinking about for 10 years, and so I created a description of what it should do, created all these features. And then I fed that into Claude and said, build me a development plan that I can feed into Claude Code. And so it created a plan, broke all the features down into 16 sprints, gave me an estimate of what the development would cost on this. And then I used Claude Code to take that output and build it. And so within about 3 hours, it had built about 50% of this 16-week project. And it was insane how much it came up with. But I've also played around with Copilot for autonomous coding. So their coding agent, which runs in the cloud, you can just assign, you can create, GitHub issues and assign it to Copilot, and it'll just go off and do that, create a PR for it. And by doing that, it was very efficient in how it was coding, and it can do all that in parallel to what I'm doing on my desktop. So And you can have any number of those running. I'm sure there's some limit somewhere, but because it's using 1 credit per turn of the crank, it's actually which comes down to like 4 cents. So it's like if it can do it in one shot, then it's 4 cents. If you have to prompt it a couple of times, then maybe you're spending a little more than that. But it's still amazing how much it can do in parallel. And I've also got it set up to review PRs. So when you create PRs in GitHub, it'll review those and come back with critiques and offer to fix those problems that it finds. So that's, to me, the sweet spot is almost like Claude Code on the desktop and Copilot coding agent doing the autonomous stuff. I tried the autonomous Claude also in the cloud, but it didn't work as well for me. So I haven't explored, I haven't debugged why that is, but the combination of those two tools to me is kind of the sweet spot.
Super, super powerful. I think that's an important aspect here, really, because you want to make sure that you're trying out a bunch of these different ones and see which one works for you, right? Like some people want to drive a pickup truck because that's what they need, and some people need the minivan because they've got a bunch of kids, right? So you've got to play with them both and see. And I think that's another super important point that you and I have both gone through as this like bleeding edge tech is we've spent the time to learn. We spent the time to fail at a bunch of these things and figure it out together. And now we can help the teams that report into us really start to leverage this the right way. So such an important piece. As we're moving into like the leverage segment, though, I really want to dive into that a little bit more with you, what we were just talking about. Like you've seen AI introduced to some organizations at different maturity levels. What does effective leverage look like in your experience? And then I'd love to try and tie it into, how the stuff that you were just talking about is going to help companies leverage those tools to go faster or better or take on more projects, like you said. Talk to us about that a little bit from a leverage perspective.
Well, I think one of the observations that I've had in all of this is that some developers may just not be happy with where we're going with this because a lot of developers love to just sit down and write code all day. And the reality is that's not the effective way to do it anymore. The tools are way advanced and can crank out a ton of code faster than anybody could write it personally. But you have to check it. So as we talked about earlier, it's got to be validated by somebody who understands it and knows it. So the developers, I think, are going to shift more to QA engineers almost, where they're looking at the code that's being created and they're trying to determine, is it doing what it's supposed to be doing? So that's one aspect of it. But I kind of skipped over the first part. I mean, telling it what to do to start with is important. Making sure you know how to build the system, defining the architecture and those kind of things. So that requires people who have experience in that regard. And I think the days of kind of bringing in a lot of junior developers to sling out code are diminishing because we need people who really understand it better. The whole overall system, how should it be built, and making sure that it's structured the right way, because AI can crank out tons of code really fast, and it can be really bad code or it could be really good code based on how you direct it to do that. And so I think finding engineers that understand that and educating those that are new to it to be able to really leverage the tools is going to be key. And if the idea is you're going to bring in a lot of people that are just, maybe the cheapest developers you can find, that may not be the right answer because they may not understand enough to be able to leverage the tools. And ultimately that may cost a lot more.
That's right. That's right. It's an interesting question. I haven't figured out the right answer in my head yet, because we are. I mean, imagine the people that started going to school for computer science or information technology degrees 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Like, they're graduating this year in the age of AI, and they don't have the 30 years of experience like I do or you do. So how do we help them be successful? Like, we want them to find a good job. We want them to be able to pay off those student loans and stuff. So it's such an interesting question to try and figure out how do we unlock that. Do you have some thoughts on what you would do with junior people on your team as AI unlocks?
I really try and get them to focus on learning the tools and learning, leveraging AI, getting up to speed. I mean, as you said, you got to take time to learn it. And so
That's right.
If they don't take time to learn it, they're not going to be successful either. It's amazing how fast it's coming, and I think that if a developer is not doing AI today, then they're going to be way behind. And so I'm encouraging. I've got 6 grown kids, and I'm encouraging them to learn AI as best they can in every aspect, whatever their job is, because it's going to be critical. So, I mean, in some ways, I feel like I'm running ahead of a steamroller, and I just got to keep running
We all
fast,
do.
or I'm
We
going
all
to
do.
get squashed. And so it's a race to see how fast I can learn stuff these days.
I mean, I'm the science fiction, and I talk about this all the time on this podcast, but it's that redefinition of work. You know what I mean? Like, I feel bad with the same people who said the same thing about, like, you and I are old enough to know that there used to be ledger clerks or telephones, or not old enough for telephone switch operators, thankfully, but you know what I mean? Like, those jobs were all replaced by Excel and the automatic switching of telephone lines. And they had to reinvent themselves. And I think developers have to embrace this change that's about to hit them hard. I'm sure the LLM is not the best at Fortran or COBOL or some of these older archaic programming systems, but it will catch up to those even as well. So, so I don't know if do you see it as almost a redefinition of work, or a redefinition of what value you bring for an hour?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. I think, there's all these different analogies of the Industrial Revolution and other things that kind of came in and took out certain types of jobs, and the internet in itself changed a lot of things. AI is the real deal. I mean, even though what we're seeing as AI and what everybody talks about AI is really primarily just this, small segment of AI, really, with LLMs. But the what's been done with that, and the leverage that's been done with that alone is amazing, and we're going to see more and more advances, obviously, in AI in general. And so I think every day we're going to have to redefine what we do, in a sense, and figure out ways to. It will make us a lot more productive. Elon Musk thinks that we're going to have nothing to do at some point because, robots and AI are going to do everything for us.
The Jetsons, or I don't know which future alternative you want. I agree completely. I mean, I certainly hope we get to maybe move to a 30-hour or 20-hour work week and spend more time enjoying life and hiking and some of the stuff we were really born to do, right? So,
I'm not sure. I mean, all these other times in history where that's happened, where people forecasted that, the work week didn't really shorten, I don't think.
That's right. So, that's right.
We'll find things to do, and hopefully we can kind of step up and raise the bar as far as how we can be more productive and be more thoughtful about and creative in solving problems that we couldn't do before, right? I mean, there's
That's
a
right.
lot more
That's
we
right.
can do. It's not just a matter of, okay, there's this finite amount of work and now we can do it faster, so we're going to have all this free time.
That's
I think
right.
the work will always fill in the gap. It's just that we'll get more and more creative, and
It's work that we can't even imagine right now, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the struggle, I think. So I really love the framing you started with, though, that we just don't get to write code anymore. I mean, like, that's going away. It's the telephone switch operator, it's the ledger clerks, whatever that is. AI is going to be a force multiplier for us with clarity and not just speed. We're going to get speed too, but it's going to help force us to be very, very clear about our intentions because it can go so fast. But I want to go back to what you were saying and dive into the last segment here, which is leadership, because leadership matters the most in my mind. It feels amplified right now. So what it's this definition around I had the question in the top of my tongue here and it disappeared. But like, from your perspective, what kind of leadership does AI in this moment really demand of us?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned, AI has got to affect pretty much every role in our world today, including leadership roles. And so, I mean, it opens up possibilities of being able to automate a lot of the processes that we do. For one, I worked with a client where we had hundreds of stories that they were creating every sprint or working on every sprint, and some of them were kind of getting off the rails, and there wasn't enough time for me or anyone else to go and look at all these different ones and see where is it getting off track, right? So, but now we could monitor that and automate that process a lot more to where we could have better visibility so that we could provide the right leadership and guidance and figure out earlier on when things might be going off the rails, for one. So, yes, it can help, monitor things and create more accountability from a team, but it can also create better visibility to executives of what is truly going on. I don't know how many times I've talked with CEOs that said, I really just don't even know what the development team is working on. Or,
That's right.
I'm not really clear. They seem to be busy, but I'm not really sure. I'm not getting visibility. I'm not getting an understanding of what it is they're doing and how fast they're getting it done. And I don't know if they're doing it fast enough or not. And so I think it can certainly raise the bar there as far as the visibility and being able to get better feedback and clarity around what the team is working on and how effective they are, and if things are getting stuck in the process somewhere, then those things could be highlighted and raised up to real humans that actually need to know and make some decisions there. So
that's for sure. It's such an interesting thing because I think you see that. I think you see three types of leaders right now. The ones that are like got their head buried in the sand and say, that AI thing's not for me. I don't need to do it. And then I see the other ones that are like, ooh, I can install this AI and I can save a bunch of money, And then you've got the ones that are like, oh, I can throw this AI thing in there and I can go twice as fast with the same amount of people. I don't know, what have you seen so far? Where do you think it's going to go with some of this stuff? I mean, obviously, the CRUD developers are going to go away to a degree. We all have to move up the ladder rung, like we discussed earlier. But where do you see leadership helping companies grow their bottom line and get the deployments faster and stuff like that?
Well, I think that, one of the things that I do a lot of is due diligence projects. And so I look at a number of companies. I go in and assess their technology and evaluate where they are. And many, many times they don't have proper testing tools in place. They don't have, they've built code really fast, but they don't have tests in place. They don't have things to help optimize the process there. And it's just one of those things, they never take time for it because they're just running fast, right? They're trying to get market share. They're trying to get this new product out the door, and those kind of things go by the wayside. This is one of the things that, AI can do really well, is build out some of those testing tools and provide a more stable environment. So that's something that, again, a lot of developers don't actually like writing the tests. That's why they get skipped a lot of times. So
that's right.
Figuring out ways to leverage that so that the team can be more productive. I do think ultimately you can do a lot more with the same people, and you can, as far as from a leadership perspective, you can kind of look at the overall process of how you're building the product and figure out where are the bottlenecks, where are the slowdowns in the system, and being able to attack that from an AI perspective. But you've got the full gamut. I mean, I mentioned due diligence. One company comes to mind I did recently, and their developers, I asked them, how are you using AI? Oh, we don't trust AI, so we don't use it at all.
Yeah.
And it was like, those are going to be the dinosaurs, because you can't just say we're not using AI. That's just not going to cut it anymore. And so figuring out how to use it, how to leverage it. There's a lot of times people are saying, well, yeah, we've got Copilot, and we're just, all the developers have Copilot. And like another CEO I talked to recently, he said, well, we're probably getting 10 to 15% improvement in productivity. And, you can use it, you can ask it questions, and it'll tell you some things, and it can help you learn how to write the code yourself, and then you probably will get 10 or 15% improvement. But I think there's many better ways to use that and leverage it to where you're going to get way more than 10 or 15% improvement. But you got to think through how can you do that, and that's where it takes leadership. It takes somebody who understands what's available, because there's so many things out there, and people really just when they think AI, most people think, oh, it's just a chat bot. I can go ask it a question and it can give me an interesting answer, and then I go off and do things the old way that I've done, and that's their view of AI. Whereas in reality, it's transforming every single step of what we do.
You nailed it. I mean, leaders need to wake up. I mean, leaders are using AI like they're light bulbs at the factory, right? Like, this is my favorite analogy to make. The leader finds out about the LLM, AKA the light bulb, and says, cool, I can install light bulbs in my factory, and now everybody can work till 8 o'clock at night, even after the sun sets. Whereas the guy next door in the factory next door said, cool, I can now automate the whole assembly floor with the motors and everything else. And that might take me twice as long to set that all up. But once I have it installed, I hate to say it, but I could get rid of half my staff, and I could produce 4 times as many widgets, right? Yeah. Or those staff members don't go away. They go into managing the assembly line or helping me build the second factory next to that one. Yeah. So I think leaders really, really need to stop thinking of LLM as light bulbs and really start thinking of how are we going to change our processes at a core fundamental way to make it AI driven at its heart, right?
Yeah, and that's the elephant in the room, right? Everybody's kind of afraid of, okay, AI is going to take over my job, so I'm, it's the enemy. I don't really want to deal with it. But the reality is, it will eliminate jobs. So but that same executive has the choice, right? They can either cut their staff in half, or they can do twice as much. And I think that's where I think we're going to see leaps and bounds by those who figure out how to use their people in a more productive way and can do more with what they have, rather than just looking at it as a cost savings and, hey, we can eliminate people and automate all this stuff, because ultimately that probably doesn't doesn't end well for the company, because their competitors are doing twice and 3 times as much because they're seeing the opportunity and they're growing their company. Whereas, if you're viewing it as just a cost savings and I can eliminate people, then you're not really getting ahead. You're just changing your costs a little bit. But you make a little more profit today, but tomorrow you're going to get, steamrolled by that other company that's really leveraging it and growing and doing more.
That's right. Yeah, that really, really, really resonates. It's those that are seeing these markings on the wall and are adopting it, not just for speed, but for long-term viability of their company. So This has been super fun and enlightening, Paul. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you.
I really appreciate your perspective. It brings a lot of clarity to a conversation that I think feels noisy at times. To everybody listening out there, if this episode helped you think differently about how AI fits into leadership and operations and development cycles, I'd encourage you to follow the show. Leave us a quick review or share it with another leader who's navigating this shift. You can learn more about Paul and the work he does over at Tech CXO, especially if you're scaling, doing due diligence, restructuring, or looking for that executive level guidance that he deals with every day. I'm Brian, and this has been AI with Bri. The tools are going to keep changing, I promise you, but strong leadership never goes out of style. So until next time, learn, leverage, and lead.
This episode of AI with Bri was hosted and produced by me, Brian Denstedt. Produced with help from Nancy Velasquez and Kelly Lopez. Video by Leo Moralina. Sound AI generated. Find us on all platforms at AI with Bri and visit ai.bri.net for more. Learn, leverage, lead.